Boeing offers airlines 3 variants to the 787 Dreamliner, however at one point, that could have been 4, with an aircraft type known as the 787-3. The Dash 3 was viewed as a game changer for short to medium haul flying. It offered truckloads of efficiency and capacity, with radical wing changes enabling global operations, slotting into very nice niches. However, this jet was never launched. The key thing to examine today is why was it scrapped, and was it the right decision? Firstly, a brief introduction to the type. Boeing introduced the 787-3 in the early 2000s as part of the broader 787 Dreamliner program. Unlike other variants in the family, its purpose stood out with a greater focus on shorter routes. While the 787-3 would have been very similar in length to the currently active smallest variant in the Dash 8, more changes would have been made to the wingspan of the type for adoption across certain markets. Reporting indicated that the plane would focus on a smaller wingspan, allowing it to slot into narrower gates and therefore featuring at more airports. Access to more gates would be possible thanks to Boeing's plan to align it with slots that, say, would typically have the 757 and 767. The Dash 3 was expected to carry anywhere from 290 to 330 passengers in a standard 2-class config, and be able to fly upwards of 5,600 kilometers. Paired with the smaller wings, the jet could have really forged a market for itself, especially acting as a replacement for airlines. After Boeing proposed the variant, it became of interest most notably in Japan, with orders coming through from Japan Airlines and ANA. They were generally the only 2 companies to ever really express interest. And despite the concept's very appeal, the 787-3 faced challenges that meant bringing the plane to market would be easier said than done, and would require investment from airlines on a significant level to make this variant worthwhile and possible. At its core, the design had a lot of potential. The variant focused on accommodating a more narrow wingspan, which had a positive knock-on effect for smaller airports. For airports with those narrower taxiway and gates, such as in Japan, among other global locations, the reality is the 787-3 would have worked well. However, this did immediately mean that the aircraft became a bit of a niche type and would have been at risk of not seeing widespread adoption that may have been, say, expected. Ultimately, demand for high-density, short-haul Dreamliner variants was insufficient to justify production, like many other endeavours that are researched by plane makers. The lack of interest in a 787-3 was certainly compounded by the changing industry trends and certainly the development of other variants in the 787 family that saw airlines more lean on the capacity and range for their long-haul missions. These established variants gained a lot more popularity than what the Dash 3 did. In 2010, Boeing would go on to formally drop the 787-3, refocusing efforts on the other available models. But was the plane actually worth it? Well, many aircraft manufacturers go on to study several options when they launch a new commercial airliner, and they try and find the best possible option, whether that is at initial launch or later down the line as they look to develop the program. As a result, airline customers will ultimately play a pretty big role in plane makers' decision-making regarding the release of specific variants they are studying. While the 787-3 from Boeing can be deemed worthwhile internally, if it receives limited interest from customers, while the business case to move towards development certainly reduces. But would the 787-3 have been a good investment for Boeing now? Or say if it was to release nowadays in the mid-2020s, its fate be the exact same, and the key catalyst for why it cancelled over a decade and a half ago still be relevant? Examining the middle of the market segment from Boeing is an avenue that remains now underserved. While Airbus, its counterpart, has moved ahead with the game-changing A321XLR, before this, airlines were still hopeful that Boeing would release a competitor aircraft, or maybe something totally different. While the 787-3's original concept as a high-density, shorter-range plane had the potential to appeal to airlines operating on crowded domestic and regional routes, limited interest from the offing on a more global scale was present. Nowadays, airlines that may have sought something similar, like the 787-3, have gone in the opposite direction, actually going more towards your single-aisle narrow-bodies with Airbus and Boeing, really putting the jets such as the A321XLR at the forefront. This is a variant that has absolutely stretched the capabilities of what we've known to love about single-aisle flying. Reviving the 787-3 at this time would be a massive mistake. It would require Boeing to divert resources away from priorities, such as their financial position and improvements on their production floors. These are of paramount importance if the business is to succeed in the long term. Considering the already investment and certification process on existing aircraft that are struggling to get approved, while the 787-3 just becomes a poor business decision. And this tracks back to the original reasoning of why the plane was scrapped for a multitude of reasons, but also the investment for so little return. Today, Boeing would be better off really focusing on other elements of its business. Due to the continued studies of the TTBW and other things, new aircraft are certainly on the horizon, but time will tell in which direction they head. For now, the 787-3 will remain a memory, but given the current complexities and technological development, it will be forever in the past. And the time is gone. Had the jet launched, it would have needed to arrive when initially proposed, so it is the right decision on Boeing's part. There are certainly endeavours that could replicate what a 787-3 was going to bring to the industry in the future, depending on the direction that the plane maker heads with new propulsion technologies, but it will likely not be in the 787-3's initial form. Keen to hear your take down below in the comments. Thanks a lot for your support. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you in a couple of days for your next industry analysis.
And we'll fly.